Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about the thing that I think is the biggest problem to manage in SBA land basically. So let's get into it. Now, let's just talk a little bit about first and foremost what I believe to be one of the most true statements that there are in front-end development. State is the root of all evil. I believe this to be true to the point where 100%, like I agree 100%. There is absolutely nothing that is as horrible to manage a really complicated state and mutations on that state. I mean, that's not even just true for the front end. That's if you've ever been on the server and you tried to do thread-based programming or anything like that with a singleton object that holds all your state and it does different acts, it's so tricky. It is so tricky. At small scale, yeah, no, it's not that hard. But when you get a lot of stuff going on and a lot of state changes and things need to execute in a very specific order and wow. State management is a really, 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 really tricky thing. And in an SBA, it gets actually a little bit worse. And what's interesting to me is that after working with tools such as React and Angular and Ember and like all these different flavors of JavaScript frameworks, and some of them I worked with for quite a while in a professional capacity, I might add, I noticed something that is, it's really, you know how you can take something for granted for the longest time? And it's only when you lose it where you really appreciate and understand how much you valued that thing. And this is the case for a lot of things when you work, at least for me, who started out doing mostly server-side render type of applications in PHP, you know. And basically, the thing I miss the most about server-side rendered applications when I work with SBA type of applications is the clearing of the state on a page refresh. What do I mean? Maybe, hopefully you feel the same way if you've been working with this, because when you make a transition, let's say that you use React Router, when you switch between different states, it's not you actually manually have to handle the clearing of your state. This is actually a cause for some serious bugs. I have had colleagues who have forgotten this, and it was actually very dangerous, a very dangerous sort of problem. We were at the time working on a administrative panel where we have different errands basically for different users, and the admins themselves, they are working on a request basically and configuring and sending out emails and doing things that actually directly affect one specific case of or one specific request from a user, an errand if you will. And we had React Router in place, and switching tabs was all done through JavaScript. And this was the dangerous part. The bug, a very subtle one, luckily I had the foresight to actually warn about this, was that when the admin clicked the next button, we simply went to the next page and we loaded the resources for that page. But we didn't clear the form state from the previous page, which meant that the admin, had they clicked by mistake, clicked the same thing twice, or rather the accept button on the next page, without editing the form would have held the state of the previous page. And this is a big tip to you guys out there. When you are working in SBA land, you need to remember to clear your state. You need to be real. I always, every single time I make a Redux implementation or like a React thing, an Angular thing or whatever, I'm mostly working with Flux because I absolutely love Flux, I always start with two things. I have one event that is called init, like initialize the state, so I can populate it with some data if I wanted to, and I always start with a clear. And the second thing is a clear, so that I can clear the whole state and reset it back to the default. Always do that. Those are important lessons, trust me. And that's something you get for free in a server-side rendered application. It is you don't know how much you miss it. Clearing the state on every refresh and just grabbing the data from the server is like it's stateless, it's elegant, it's beautiful. I absolutely love it. And I actually argue that when you have an SPA, you should do the same thing. Always clear the state and refresh it from the server. Just do it. Don't try to get fancy. In fact, I think that it's that's the thing that's left really for me. The only reason why I these days I'm still using React and Angular and these types of tools is, apart from it of course being very popular in the job market, it is because they give me a very good structure to a scalable structure for components and so forth. And I've been toying around with a few ideas that I think that I just want to try it out to see if I can make it work, because if I can, then I would get the same productivity and scalability and components and all that good stuff in vanilla JavaScript with server-side rendered elements, and then just having JavaScript mutate those elements. Because the biggest contribution to front-end, in my opinion, these days, at least for the people who are familiar with vanilla JavaScript, is Redux or Flux in more specifically. The idea of that state management system. And that's not a new thing. You may think it's a new thing, but it's basically just a pub sub system. And these have been around for a while. Event-driven type of solution to this problem of state management, because for the juniors out there, you may not realize why state is so tricky. State is not tricky if you only have to declare a variable that a single component needs to look at and have a good feel for what's going on, and changes in that variable is going to affect a single component. But when you have something going on one side of the page, and then you have other components that need to know and respond to what's happening in several other areas. In other words, you have components that have joint interests in the state change. That gets very tricky very, very quickly. And that's what I think is so elegant about Flux, where you basically just have a event message bus system that all of your different components wire up to and listen on, and you just dispatch messages in a synchronous fashion. Synchronous is very, very important in this sort of structure, because you want to be sure that messages are arriving in the exact same sequence that they are being dispatched, because you need to be able to trust that if you send message A is going to be received before message B. If they start mixing up, you might as well just throw out the system, because you will have events that are very important. I mean, if you imagine yourself, what happens if the init message that starts everything up gets sent, and then the clear gets sent, and they don't come in the same order. So sometimes you init the state, sometimes you clear it, and sometimes you init it and then you clear. It gets really, really weird really, really quickly. But those are my 2 cents on this. And the thing I want to leave you with is that if you are building a vanilla JavaScript implementation, which I think that I encourage you to try that out. The one thing I want you to bring with you is the state management. Take a look at Redux, for example, which is probably my favorite state management library right now. Redux, although it's very associated with React these days, it can actually be used outside of React. You don't have to use React for it, and it's actually very powerful. I made a video where I actually made my own Redux implementation. It's not as nice as the real thing. You should use the real thing if you can, but you can actually pull that out, and it's actually very, very powerful, because trust me, vanilla JavaScript, it's actually there are absolutely situations where you don't want an SPA framework, but you want help with the state management. Because the scoping problem that JavaScript used to have, that has been solved by bundlers. There are nicer ways to solve it, but right now we are using bundlers to help out with that scoping. And the only thing that's really left to do really nice vanilla JavaScript products is to manage that state, to have a way of doing that. And I think Redux is a very nice way to do that. So hopefully you'll use it. Have a great day.